The 1998 book, Right Hemisphere in Language Comprehension, states that the communication of right hemisphere damaged patients is also disrupted, particularly at the level of discourse. They are often tangential in conversation, jumping from topic to topic and introducing new topics without thinking to bridge the gap for the listeners. I read a book that mentioned Aspergers, that's a form of autism, as being specifically related to right hemisphere deficit disorder. Back to the book, this page on 310, chapter called Deficits in Inference and Social Cognition. Patients are thus frequently unable to maintain the theme of a conversation, and they are prone to missing the overall point of a conversation or story. An excessively concrete, literal approach to language at all levels limits understanding. As a result, right hemisphere damaged have difficulty understanding metaphor, sarcasm, and some forms of humor, and they may misinterpret a speaker's intended meaning of an indirect request, responding instead to the literal sentence meaning of an utterance. Okay? So, in this book, even though it doesn't mention autism or Aspergers specifically, it refers to having a problem with first order belief. That's one's belief about the world, and difficulty in second order beliefs about a different person's knowledge. That would be social mirroring, or in another context, theory of mind. Alright? So that means this person with Asperger's or right hemisphere deficit disorder or damage to that right hemisphere has problems building mental models. That includes using information to build a model of discourse. Okay? So how would this happen? Well, this relates to, do I view an external cause or internal cause for trait-like factors to explain the behavior of others? Okay? So in relating to understanding how other people are different, it relates that clearly abandoning one's own points of view in order to appreciate another person's perspective requires considerable flexibility. So you'd have to be able to do that in order to not bring in your own bias to look at a situation. Right hemisphere has a great deal of influence on the insight process. Insight problem-solving processes are not well suited to verbal analysis and can even be disrupted by verbalization. Okay, so that in that case would not be independently capable of insight problem-solving, involved in the critical processes that contribute to insightful solutions. So there would be an impasse to non-obvious approaches to problem solving. If you're merely logical, it would have probably problems with insight. Previous experience hinders from using novel or new, and you'd be fixating on either given models or non-optimal models. Okay, so in this instance, if you're relying surely on the right hemisphere, you might have an inappropriate sense of humor, a penchant for inappropriate jokes, because you'd have a necessary lack in inhibition ability, which is done with the left hemisphere. Okay, so the right hemisphere would be primed by distant associations, the big picture. Okay, and have less inhibition than the left hemisphere. And the left hemisphere allows you to pick up non-dominant interpretations. So I'm going to shift to using a different perspective. Okay, if you compare the corpus callosum, which is the bridge between the two hemispheres, there's a scripture. Jesus said, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. All right, so your left hemisphere would be controlling your right hand, and that would be the verbal side of the brain, where you would not be declaring your public works. You might be doing good, but you're not declaring it. You're being precise. You're directing your behavior. And your left hand would be inclusive. It would regard used to use the bathroom with the left hand, because in some cultures there in the Middle East, so there's some things you keep to yourself. And so the comparison is between left hand and right hand. And right hand, oh, this is what I'm doing, but you're not making a show of it. Okay, so bridging the two brains, this little connecting thing called the corpus callosum. Okay, and Jesus also tells one dirty joke. There's one dirty joke he tells. It says, it's not what goes inside a man that pollutes a man, but what comes out of a man's mouth. Okay, so if what goes into your ears is good, use your left ear, which might help you interpret emotional significance, instinctual significance of things that you are learning. Okay, and appropriate jokes would reference, would have to have the right timing, and that joke that Jesus did was basically repudiating the expectation, because that the way he said it was unexpected. The result, it wasn't shocking, but it wasn't going for merely trying to make people laugh. He's trying to make people think. So in regard to Aspergers and autism, and being able to create a reputation, to build a rapport, is important, to consider. Let me just break it down a little bit again. So your right hemisphere would be semantic, the overall picture, and your left hemisphere would allow you to pick up details. That would be syntax. Okay, so you might be able to pick out little things if you have a terminology, you built a group of definitions, a lexicon of different information, so that you can understand things. You can pull abstractions, and you can find similar meanings, but overall concepts, to compare a situation. You can get lost in semantics. You can get lost in words. Insights, you have to be able to think it out. And verbalizing it just allows you to be more, focused. So if your left hemisphere allows you to focus, if you zoom out, use your overall picture, your emotions help you to find relevancy. Okay, bye.